Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. But even in those episodes, not everything was perfect, and today, we'll take a look at some of those mistakes. Hello and welcome to Backtrek, a web series that focuses on the background information of any given topic in Star Trek. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the mistakes made in the second half of Season 1 of Star Trek The Original Series. Please note, well, here we are again. Personally, I love making these little videos, but unfortunately, not only do they take a great deal of time to put together, but some people still don't understand that these videos are all in good fun, celebrating Star Trek The Original Series and not putting it down. And just a reminder, if you want to explain away any of the mistakes listed in this video, then it has to be with in-universe canon explanations only. So novels, video games, tech manuals, real-life background information, and that squire you know down the street are not valid sources to explain away these mistakes. Anyhow, grab your Landru worshipping poles, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. At the beginning of the episode, the Enterprise sends a shuttlecraft with a scientific team to study the quasar that the starship has encountered. My question is, why are Scotty and McCoy part of this team? Sure, in terms of the story itself, Scotty is needed to be there to be able to repair the shuttle and work some of his magic. But would an engineer really be sent as part of a scientific away mission? And the same goes for Dr. McCoy. Sure, it could be said that maybe he's there to study the effects of this phenomena on human beings, but I just don't get that sense at all from the episode, and no dialogue suggests that the phenomena could be dangerous to humans. The giants, the humanoids that occupy this planet, seem way off. It's said they're between 10 to 12 feet tall.
10, 12 feet in height.
But I'm 5'10" and have a 10-inch shoe size. But look at the shoe size of these giants. They seem to be about 3 feet long. Plus, scenes and props belonging to the giants seem to suggest a much larger humanoid than 10 to 12 feet. Also, in regards to the giants, why doesn't Spock simply order them stunned? Phasers can be set to stun, so why is it a do-or-die situation? Wouldn't a stunned giant appear to be dead to the other giants, thereby achieving the same results? When Spock carries Gaetano's body back to the shuttlecraft, watch the spears. One hits the rocks and you can see a piece of styrofoam break off. When the giants attack the Galileo shuttle, the scenes inside the shuttlecraft show the window covers are open. But when we cut to the outside of the shuttle, suddenly the window covers are closed. During the scene where Spock jettisons the fuel to effectively send up a flare signal to the Enterprise, watch the console. It appears as though Spock presses a button on the center console between him and Scotty. But if you look at the forward console in the center, that console doesn't actually exist in that position. In fact, that console is beside and behind Mr. Scott. The end part of the episode provides two strange occurrences. First, when the Enterprise rescues the shuttle party, Uhura tells Kirk that there are 5 survivors.
Captain, transporter room just beamed up 5 persons, alive and well.
Kirk smiles and looks happy. Why is he smiling exactly? He doesn't know which 5 people survived. After all, as far as he knows, Spock and McCoy might have been dead. Second, after this, Kirk orders the ship to head to Macus 3 at Warp Factor 1. Warp Factor 1? Shouldn't he be trying to make up some time? After all, he waited until the last possible second to leave. Wouldn't Warp Factor 6 be more appropriate? Of course, Season 3 of Strange New Worlds is the Enterprise's first encounter with the Squire of Gothos, tying Trelane to the Q Continuum and giving new meaning to this TOS episode. And although they went to great lengths to keep canon's integrity over the matter, I do find it a bit unbelievable that Spock did not connect the events of the episode to the random guy with the same such powers and mannerisms that almost forced him to marry Nurse Chapel years prior. At the beginning of the episode, Spock declares that the space ahead is clear. Then he walks over to the navigator station and says something has appeared. Kirk then asks DeSalle to verify the statement, and DeSalle says at first he can't.
Forward readings, Mr. Spock.
Gravimetric reading, no significant change. 0 space density.
Ahead warp factor 3, Mr. Sulu.
Unusual, Captain. I'm now getting a sizable space displacement reading.
Can you verify that, Navigator?
No, sir. Forward sweeps are negative. Wait, verified, sir.
But Spock saw this something while looking at the navigator station. So, why can't DeSalle see the same thing? Do navigation sensors only show things to Vulcanize? Speaking of DeSalle, watch when he beams down with the landing party. After attempting to contact the ship, he flips his communicator closed twice. Someone's math seems to be off again in this episode. Trelane says he's been watching Earth. The team quickly deduces that the device he uses must be watching the Earth of 900 years beforehand. The first season of TOS takes place in 2265, so that would make Trelane viewing the Earth at around 1365. But Trelane mentions Napoleon and Alexander Hamilton, both of which are from the 1800s. So how could Trelane have watched them? Spock makes a strange comment during this episode. When Kirk interrogates him about the machine that must be maintaining the planet's atmosphere, Spock says,
A device capable of keeping out this planet's natural atmosphere would be immense.
Who says? How does he come to this conclusion? When does size denote capability? Isn't the trend that technology, as it gets more advanced, also gets smaller? This is another episode that Strange New Worlds has had a profound effect on, given that the series has one of its big baddies being the Gorn, even though Kirk makes the clear statement that
I faced the creature the Metrons called a Gorn.
Some obvious retconning seems to be going on here, but maybe in a future episode they'll explain it all away for us. Who knows, but I thought I'd mention it here nonetheless. At the beginning of the episode, why doesn't the Enterprise's sensors detect all that destruction on the planet? And once on the planet, Kirk finds a box filled with future grenades. But watch Kirk. First, he sets the box down, and then in the next shot, it's in his hands again. When Kirk disappears from the bridge while pursuing the Gorn, Uhura screams.
He's gone.
Why? She didn't scream in the previous episode when Kirk disappeared. Maybe she just forgot she was used to it. In this episode, Kirk declares that the planet's gems represent an incredible fortune.
An incredible fortune in stones. Yet I would trade them all for a hand phaser.
If that's true, then why does Kirk claim in the episode Cat's Paw,
Diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sapphires.
We could manufacture a ton of these on our ship for you, Coral. They mean nothing to us.
wouldn't that negate the fortune found on this planet? When Kirk is collecting materials to make his primitive superweapon, he places everything into the bamboo-like tube he collected. But after Kirk dumps it all out of the tube, he starts to make coal powder, and suddenly, all the materials, including the powders, are in neat little piles. The Metrons are a really nice species. When they send Kirk back to his ship, suddenly, all signs of the struggle he had with the Gorn are gone. Normally, I don't comment on these things, but since it's so obvious, I thought it deserved a mention. Look at the screens on top of the computer consoles. They are obviously paper cutouts. Look at the rippling. At the beginning of this episode, we get to see how amazing the transporter is. When Kirk orders Captain Christopher to be beamed up, while his vessel is breaking apart, the transporter miraculously beams Christopher up standing, even though he was sitting in a cockpit. It should be noted that this is a mistake because the transporters of the TNG era don't have this capability, and that in the TOS episode The Corbomite Maneuver, Mr. Scott tells the landing party to hunker down because the space is cramped. So, if the transporter had this automatic ability to rearrange a person into whatever shape is necessary, then why would the landing party have to bend down then? Though not a mistake per se, it does seem really odd that Mr. Spock would make the mistake of not checking to see if Christopher's children may have made contributions to history, especially since later in the episode he's calculating 100 variables in his head. When Kirk and Sulu beam down to the army base, why are they wearing their Starfleet uniforms? Wouldn't it have made more sense for them to be wearing period-specific costumes? Like in the episode Patterns of Force? In that episode, he had McCoy dressed up in a Nazi uniform for the beam down. Spock seems to think it's logical for the Enterprise to begin heading back in time as it warps towards the sun. But shouldn't this have happened in the Star Trek IV movie then? In fact, this sort of travel towards the sun and time starts backwards doesn't happen again in any of the Trek TV shows or movies. It appears as though only one version of an entity can exist in any given time frame, as the Enterprise disappears from the sky as the future ship reaches the time frame warping past it. If this is true though, shouldn't Christopher and the other guests disappear from their respective time frames too, since they're on board the Enterprise? In the episode Wolf in the Fold, the audience is led to believe that the computer's ability to detect lies is infallible and admissible in court. But in this episode, not only is it not utilized, but it's never even mentioned. Why, in Spock's court-martial, didn't he have a prosecuting attorney and a defending attorney like in this episode? Here's another example of the Enterprise's computer editing its flight recorder to enhance dramatic quality. But besides that, there's another problem with this. In the menagerie, Kirk says,
Mr. Spock, no vessel makes record tapes in that detail, that perfect. What were we watching?
well, it looks like they do. Are we supposed to believe that the jettison of this pod is so high up on the captain's list that it warrants its own button on the captain's chair? Kirk has seemed to have an interesting career in Starfleet. In Where No Man Has Gone Before, Mitchell states that Lieutenant Kirk taught at the Academy. Yet, in this episode, an Ensign Kirk logged Finney's mistake. So that would mean Kirk went out into space, came back after being promoted to teach, then went back out into space. It's not a mistake, but it's pretty odd. When the court reconvenes aboard the Enterprise, Kirk and company change out of their dress uniforms. Wouldn't that be disrespectful to the court? When Kirk is discussing the Enterprise's ability to hear sounds, he says that with McCoy's microphone, they can increase the effectiveness by 1 to the 4th power. Better go back to the Academy, Kirk. 1 to the 4th power equals 1, meaning it wouldn't increase at all. In the final battle between Kirk and Finney, we get to see a huge wrench. Does the Enterprise really have nuts that big? Or actually nuts at all? In this episode, Kirk seems to forget all about the Prime Directive. At the beginning of the episode, Kirk and the landing party, all decked out in planetary dress, beam right down into the middle of a main street. Why didn't they beam down to an alley to avoid people watching them materialize? The windows in Reger's home are an interesting oddity. In the long shots, they appear to be blacked out. Yet in the close-ups, they're well lit, waiting for the landing party to look down onto the street below. Landru makes an interesting statement.
You have come to a world without hate, without fear, without conflict.
Well, what does he call the festival then? Sure looks like a conflict to me. When Kirk and company reach the safe house, Reger pulls out a light panel, and it shines light in all directions, 360 degrees. Why then, when he sets it on the shelf, does it cast a shadow behind itself? Watch the guard by the door to the safe house. He puts his hands to his ear way before Landru uses the sonic weapon. At the beginning of the episode, Sulu becomes of the body when one of the lawgivers flashes staff at him. So why didn't the lawgivers simply do the same thing with Kirk and company? Instead, they have to take them to an absorption center. Why exactly? Shortly after McCoy returns to the dungeon that's holding the landing party, a close-up shot of Kirk shows his hair parted on the wrong side. If Landru could neutralize the phasers, why didn't he do that before Kirk put a huge hole in the wall? Watch the shots of the hall audience through the hole. Notice the bluish wall beyond its door. Shouldn't it be a corridor and not a wall? While the Landru computer is being fried, notice the burned line under the yellow panel. When Kirk enters the computer room, suddenly it's gone. I guess James T. Kirk's perfect score for baiting and winning against computer systems isn't as perfect as we were led to believe, as by 2380, Landru is once again up and running, having full control over the people of Beta 3. See Star Trek Lower Decks, No Small Parts. Of course, history and math are way off in this episode. First, if Khan and his crew escaped in 1999, that would mean that he was born in the late 50s or early 1960s. This is based, of course, on the fact that he looks to be in his 30s. Were scientists of that era really able to genetically engineer a person like Khan? Second, I must have slept through 1993 when over 40 countries were taken over by these genetic supermen. Third, as far as I know, there aren't any interplanetary spacecrafts with cryotubes in existence now, let alone in 1999. And finally, given all these inconsistencies, that we can all forgive since this is a common problem when sci-fi shows speak of events that are only decades away, one thing that doesn't make sense is why these events aren't classified as World War III. 40 countries taken over that the world banded together to defeat sure sounds like World War III to me. But instead, we find out in future Trek series, a completely different set of events which occurs in 2026 becomes classified as World War III. When the landing party is prepared to beam over to the Botany Bay, watch the transporter officer. In the first shot, he's wearing a blue uniform. But then, in the close-up, suddenly he's in a red uniform. The statue of a head in MacGyver's quarters must be a popular item indeed. It's the same one that Dr. Adams has in the episode Dagger of the Mind. After breaking the glass on Khan's sleeper pod, watch Kirk's phaser. It unceremoniously falls to the floor. So much for those Velcro belts. Why does Kirk give Khan access to the ship's tech manuals? After all, he knows the name of Khan's ship is Botany Bay, and that was a penal colony back in the era that Khan comes from. Wouldn't it make more sense to wait and find out more about Khan before giving him that kind of information? Why is McCoy so surprised by food on the table during the dinner scene?
Very impressive. Are we expecting a fleet admiral for dinner?
Does this mean that when Rand brought Sulu his meal in the man-trap, that Sulu was eating like a visiting dignitary? Or is it just that celery and colored cubes are a huge delicacy in 2265? When Khan cuts off the life support systems to the bridge, when he first takes over the Enterprise, Kirk makes a log entry.
Only moments of air left on the bridge now.
Why does he only give commendations to 5 out of the 7 bridge crew members? Did the other 2 do something wrong? Watch the gauge in the decompression of Kirk's scene. First, it shows the gauge at 10 Hg. But then in the next shot, suddenly it's back up to 20 Hgs. This episode starts off on the wrong foot. Right away, the Federation's most important law, the Prime Directive, is ignored, and continues to be ignored throughout the entire episode. When a Miniar is attacked, we're told that fusion bombs are materialized over the planet, and as a result, Mira is put on the casualty list. But look at where Mira is when these supposed bombs go off. At that position, shouldn't Kirk also be on that list? Starbase 11 must have had a yard sale after the events of the Menagerie Part 1. The Amenian computers are the exact same ones from that episode. How impossible is it for another planet's culture to develop the exact same computer systems with the exact same dimensions and looks? When Eminiar attacks the Enterprise, Mr. DePaul exclaims,
"Sensors reading 0. Correction, Mr. Scott.
Yes, Mr. DePaul.
Sensor readings just shot off the scale. Extremely powerful sonic vibrations. Decibels 18 to the 12th power.
How are they a danger to the Enterprise then? Sound waves can't travel through the vacuum of space. When Anon is attacking the Enterprise, Ambassador Fox convinces the Amenians to open a dialogue, saying he'll beam down to talk. Anon then gives the order for the officers to,
The minute their screens are down, open fire.
Yes, Councilman.
We see Fox beam down, so why isn't the Enterprise destroyed or at least damaged? We know from the episode Arena that the Enterprise can't transport anyone without lowering its shields first. When Spock destroys the disintegration chamber, the first shot shows its door is open, but then in the next shot, the door is suddenly closed. This episode brings up an interesting question. If the spores give protection from the Berthold rays, and also cures old scars and leaves the body free from disease, why doesn't everyone from the Federation with an illness or disease simply travel to this planet, beam down, get infected by the spores, get cured, beam back up, and have someone get them angry? It's the Quadrant's miracle cure to anything that ails you. Why is Starfleet interfering with these colonists? Even after McCoy certifies that they are all healthy, Starfleet decides to have them evacuated. Maybe they want the miracle cure-all planet for themselves.
Jean-Luc, there are 600 people down there. We'll be able to use the regenerative properties of this radiation to help billions.
How many people does it take, Admiral, before it becomes wrong? 1 million? How many people does it take, Admiral?
When Spock is infected by the spores, he goes through a plethora of emotions. Shouldn't they have killed off the spores as they were trying to infect him? Someone is repainting the doors of the Enterprise. In this episode, the doors down the corridor from the transporter room are red. But in Tomorrow is Yesterday, they're blue. And in case you think that there are multiple transporter rooms, in that same episode, Tomorrow is Yesterday, Kirk says,
Captain Christopher is not in his assigned quarters. He may be trying to escape the ship. I want a man outside the transporter room immediately. I'm heading there myself.
The transporter room meaning only one. Just before Kirk is sprayed on the bridge, a shot clearly shows that the floor is empty. So where exactly did the plant come from? And in that case, how does this plant move? This episode presents a few problems in regards to the Horda itself. First, how did the Horda know what part to steal to shut down the facility's life support systems? There is no indication that the Horda had any sort of technology, so it's really far-fetched to believe that it would understand any of the mining technological systems. Second, how exactly did the Horda disconnect the required part in the first place, and then transport it out of the life support center? I don't see any hands on that Horda. And third, why are the tunnels that the Horda creates as it burrows through stone round, especially considering the Horda itself is a half-oval shape? Vanderberg's button on the underside of his office desk, the one to open the door, seems to move during the episode. In one scene, it's close to the center of the desk. And the next time he uses it, it seems to be near the end of the desk. Why exactly does such an important facility not have spare parts to fix such a potentially major problem? When Kirk and Spock are searching for the Horda, at one point Kirk points and tells Spock to head to the left. The problem here is, he's actually pointing to the right. Several times during the episode, Kirk's communicator forgets to chirp when he opens it. Near the beginning of the episode, Spock comments that the Organians are a D- on the Richter scale of evolution.
This is not a primitive society making progress toward mechanization. They are totally stagnant.
If this is true, why doesn't anyone comment on the automatic doors to the council chambers? After the Klingons occupy Organia, Kor posts rules for the Organians to follow. One rule is that there are not to be an assembly of people in groups of 3 or more. Why then does Kor continue to let the council of 5 people meet? After Kirk bumps into a Klingon and Spock intervenes, preventing a brawl, Kirk and Spock discuss quite openly their plans against the Klingons, and Spock even calls Kirk captain. So why doesn't the Klingon officer only a few feet away report this? The Klingons must buy their weapons from the Armenians. See A Taste of Armageddon. Spock comments on how odd the behavior of the Council is. What about pacifism being the highest virtue in Vulcan culture? See The Savage Curtain. After Kor discovers Barona is actually Captain Kirk, Kor offers him a drink. I guess the future Dahar Master doesn't know the Klingon code. Drink not with thine enemy, as described by Q in the TNG episode Hide and Q. The munitions dump scene presents us with 2 problems. First, where, in a munitions dump, are all the guards? It seems really unbelievable to think that a race like the Klingons would just leave unguarded weapons out in the open. After Kirk and Spock take Kor prisoner, Spock removes Kor's disruptor. Later, when Kor heads over to his desk to use his comm unit, suddenly he's wearing it again. Then, after he moves around the desk, suddenly it's gone again. Kirk makes an odd comment at the end of this episode.
We think of ourselves as the most powerful beings in the universe. It's unsettling to discover that we're wrong.
Kirk must be unsettled a lot then, because up to this point we've seen the Thasians, the Telosians, Balok, Trelane, the Metrons, and the builders of the amusement park, all of which are more powerful beings in the universe. At the beginning of this episode, how exactly does the Commodore know that the distortions hit all areas of the galaxy and beyond? Does Starfleet have almost instantaneous contact with other galaxies? The answer? No. See Star Trek Voyager. Why exactly does Lazarus have easy access all over the ship? He's a clearly disturbed individual that appeared suddenly coinciding with the distortions from the planet, especially considering that Starfleet and Kirk are so worried that this might all be a prelude to an invasion. Why isn't he under close observation? The med panel in sickbay must be malfunctioning again. As Lazarus gets up from his bed, the med panel continues to thump away as though someone was still lying there. When Kirk takes McCoy to search for Lazarus with a head wound, you can see 2 red alert panels. However, only one is flashing, the other's light bulb must be burnt out. Starfleet must love the design of the neural neutralizer from Dagger of the Mind. It makes another appearance in this episode, this time as a console in engineering. Why does Kirk keep referring to the woman engineer as Lieutenant? Take a look at her uniform. There is no lieutenant stripe on it. Lazarus's beard is completely distracting in this episode. All throughout, it keeps switching from very thick to very thin. After McCoy injects himself at the beginning of this episode, he begins to scream. Why exactly do Kirk and Spock just stand around while all this is happening? Speaking of McCoy, isn't it unbelievable that he can throw off Spock's grip? See This Side of Paradise. When McCoy leaves the bridge, he has no belt. When he enters the transporter room, still no belt. And the transporter operator has a belt. McCoy clobbers him, takes his phaser, engages the transporter, and heads to the chamber. Then, when the security officer finds the transporter operator, his belt is gone. And on the surface, McCoy is wearing the belt. So the question here is, when exactly did McCoy take the transporter operator's belt? It is possible that McCoy headed to the transporter chamber, realized he didn't have the belt, came back down, took the belt, reset the transporter, and beamed down. But this seems highly unlikely, especially given his mental state. Why doesn't Uhura use her tricorder to locate Dr. McCoy on the planet's surface? Shouldn't it easily be able to do that? How exactly did Spock's tricorder record the historical events that happened after McCoy steps through the Guardian? The Guardian stops playing them immediately. Of course, if it hadn't, he wouldn't later have been able to discover that Edith Keeler was the focal point of the time changes. Speaking of the Guardian, early on the Guardian explains that it can only run time at a fixed rate. Because of this, we can actually pinpoint exactly when McCoy stepped through, and then during the replay when exactly Kirk and Spock should leap through. Using the cannon firing and the infantry charge as a starting point, we can say McCoy stepped through about 25 seconds afterwards. Since Kirk and Spock show up a little before McCoy, they would have to have stepped through the Guardian less than 25 seconds after the infantry charge image. But if you count it, Kirk and Spock stepped through 56 seconds after the infantry charge, meaning there's no way they could have ended up in the same century as McCoy, let alone slightly before him. When McCoy steps through the Guardian of Forever, he takes a phaser with him. Where exactly did he get this phaser? In order for him to still have it, when he steps through the Guardian would mean that when he was captured, no one bothered to disarm the crazy and irrational Doctor. Tricorders seem to have a huge design flaw. They can record information, but can only play that information back when hooked up to a computer. Does that make sense? Why does Spock say that he doesn't know when Edith Keeler dies? He sees her obituary, doesn't he? And doesn't an obituary usually contain the date and time of death of a person? When Edith stumbles down the stairs, Kirk valiantly catches her. Watch her shoes though. When stumbling, she's wearing both shoes. Then suddenly, when heading back up the stairs, she's wearing only one shoe. The end of this episode makes a big deal about Spock's super hearing abilities.
You've been so concerned about his Vulcan eyes, Doctor, you forgot about his Vulcan ears. Ahead, warp factor 1, Mr. Sulu.
Why then, on the surface, is it Kirk that follows the chirping noise when he and Spock are standing side by side? In What Are Little Girls Made Of, Kirk says his brother has 3 sons.
George Samuel Kirk, your brother. Only you call him Sam. He saw me off on this mission. Yes, with his wife and 3 sons.
Yet, in this episode, everyone acts like Kirk's brother only had 1 son. When Kirk thinks the landing party are heading into a trap, he orders a strategic withdrawal. Then everyone turns their backs and begins to retreat. Well, that doesn't seem very strategic to me. What's Kirk's rush to test the blinding light on humanoids? After all, the Enterprise could make sure no ships leave Deneva while they're waiting for the test results. During the scene where the Enterprise is deploying the satellites in orbit to get rid of the creatures, Sulu's at the helm. After Kirk orders all satellites to be engaged, we see a shot of the helm console. Sitting in Sulu's spot is a red-shirted individual. So what exactly happened to Sulu? Well, there you have it. Thank you for watching today's episode of Backtrek. What did you think of all the mistakes I've pointed out in the second half of Season 1 of Star Trek The Original Series? Do you have any canon explanations for those mistakes? Well, leave your comments in the section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel continue to show its love for Trek through videos like this one? Then consider becoming a channel member subscriber or a channel patron, both a major help that allows this channel to purchase resources and 3D models to keep it going. The link to both memberships is in the description below. Thanks again for watching, live long, and prosper.